She said no to my proposal. I was embarrassed. Then my sister dropped a bombshell about girl code. I thought I knew exactly where I stood. After 4 years of dating Liz, everything seemed perfect. But in the seconds it took for her to say those words, "Can we wait a few more months?" everything shattered. I was 27 and she was 26. We talked about marriage, kids, and everything that came with a future together. I had even planned the perfect proposal. A resort getaway. A private dinner under the stars. It was going to be our moment. The moment where I finally asked her to be my wife. But now, as I stood there on one knee, my heart pounding, the ring in my hand feeling heavier by the second, I realized something wasn't right. Liz froze, her eyes wide, her lips parted, but no words came out at first. After what felt like an eternity, she finally spoke. "Can we, wait a few more months?" The silence that followed was deafening. I was stuck there, my knees aching, my chest tightening with confusion. We had spent countless nights talking about our future, planning for a life together. How could she not be sure now? Her explanation, if you could call it that, made things worse. She wasn't rejecting me, she said. She just needed more time to be sure. She kept repeating, "This is still a yes, just not an official yes yet." But how could I not take that personally? It felt like everything I thought we were building had been reduced to a question mark. She wasn't ready, and that was all she could give me. The night ended with her apologies and reassurances, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being blindsided. The dream I had built for us was slipping through my fingers, and I had no idea what was real anymore. For the first time, doubt crept in, and I wondered if I had missed something. Had I overlooked signs? Maybe I'd rushed into this. Maybe she wasn't ready. Maybe I was never really the one. The following morning, the awkward silence in the car was palpable. Liz tried to apologize again, but her words only deepened the pit in my stomach. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but I was too embarrassed. I felt like an idiot, wondering if I had misjudged the entire relationship. At home, the days that followed were strange. Liz would act as if nothing had changed, but I couldn't shake the sense of betrayal. She still loved me, she said, but she wasn't sure if she was ready to marry me. And I was left here, holding on to a relationship that felt like it was crumbling beneath me. Her need for time didn't feel like a reasonable answer anymore. It felt like an excuse. I couldn't help but wonder. Was there something else? Was there someone else? I didn't know how to confront her. I wanted to ask, but every time I tried, she'd cry and beg me not to leave. But how could I stay in a relationship where I wasn't the sure thing? That night, I sat alone, trying to make sense of it all. Should I push for more clarity? Or should I give her space? The truth was, I didn't know what to do anymore. Everything changed when I decided to talk to my sister. She didn't mince words, she never did. After listening to the entire story, her response was immediate. "Something's off," she said bluntly. "I think Liz is hiding something from you." At first, I brushed it off. Liz wasn't like that. We had built something real, or so I thought. But my sister kept going, her words hitting me like a cold splash of water. "When a girl hesitates like that, it usually means there's someone else," she said, the gravity of her words sinking in. I didn't want to believe it. Liz, the girl I thought I knew better than anyone, couldn't be like that. But my sister's warning lingered in my mind, gnawing at me. "You need to dig deeper," she urged. "Find out if there's someone else. You deserve the truth." That night, I couldn't sleep. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how many little things had been bugging me. The late-night texts, the way Liz would smile at her phone when it buzzed. I hadn't connected the dots before, but now, every moment seemed like a clue. My sister was right. Something was off. But how do you confront the woman you love with suspicion? How do you ask the one person you trust if they're lying to you without destroying everything? To be continued. The next few days felt like I was walking on a tightrope. Liz was doing everything she could to act normal, but the cracks were starting to show. She'd hold me a little too tightly during the rare moments we'd sit together. She'd laugh at things I said, but it felt rehearsed. I didn't know whether she was doing it out of guilt or if she was just pretending to keep me from noticing the growing distance between us. It wasn't until one night, as we sat on the couch, that I couldn't take it anymore. The question had been sitting on the tip of my tongue for days. Was she seeing someone else? I didn't want to believe it, but the doubt had become too overwhelming to ignore. I asked her casually about this new guy from her work, the one she had mentioned a few times. I didn't mean to sound accusatory, but I could feel the tension in my chest building as I spoke. She immediately went on the defensive. "Oh, him," she said, brushing it off as if it were nothing. "He's just a guy I work with. He's cool, that's all." But the way her voice trembled, the way her eyes shifted nervously, it didn't.
"Sit right with me."
I kept pushing, asking if she had been spending time with him outside of work. She immediately changed the subject, a move so transparent that it felt like I'd caught her in a lie. The familiar gnawing sensation in my gut started again. My sister's words were ringing in my ears. "Pay attention. This is how it starts." I couldn't get it out of my head. Something was wrong. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying the conversation over and over, trying to figure out what was real and what was just my imagination running wild. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was being hidden from me. And deep down, I feared it had something to do with this guy from her work. But I needed proof. I couldn't just accuse her without knowing for sure. So, I did what I never imagined I'd do. I grabbed her phone when she was asleep. It felt wrong, like I was crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed, but I needed to know. I couldn't live in this limbo of doubt. As my fingers hovered over the screen, my heart raced. Every tap felt like a betrayal. But I convinced myself it was the only way to get the truth. And there it was. A message from him, sent late at night. At first, it seemed harmless enough, small talk, workplace chatter. But then I saw something that made my stomach drop. "I miss you," followed by a heart emoji. My blood ran cold. Liz had replied with something equally as flirtatious, saying, "Me too." I felt sick. The room spun as I read through more messages, each one a crack in the illusion I had so carefully built. Late-night conversations, shared inside jokes, and most damning of all, the "I miss you" text. That was more than friendly banter. It was emotional intimacy, something I thought we had shared, something that should have been reserved for me, not some random coworker. I quietly put the phone back, trying not to wake her. The weight of what I had just uncovered was almost too much to bear. But the worst part was yet to come. I didn't say anything that night. I couldn't. I was paralyzed with the knowledge of what I had found, yet unsure of how to confront her. In the morning, Liz acted as if nothing was wrong. She made breakfast like usual, went about her day with her usual bubbly attitude. But I was different. I felt like I was sitting across from a stranger. Every word she said made me want to scream. "How can you be so calm when I know what you've been hiding?" I couldn't just sit there and let her continue pretending everything was okay. So, I asked her point blank that afternoon, "Are you still happy with me? Are you sure you're not interested in someone else?" The question hung in the air like a sword ready to fall. She was taken aback, but instead of answering directly, she put on a defensive mask. "Of course I'm happy with you. Why would you even ask that?" I felt the heat rise in my chest, my hands trembling. "Then why is this guy texting you late at night? Why do you seem so much more alive when you talk about him?" "I've seen the messages, Liz. I know what's been going on." She froze. Her face drained of color, and for a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of guilt. But she quickly hid it behind her usual excuses. "It's nothing. He's just a friend," she said, but her voice quivered. She tried to smooth it over with more reassurances, but I couldn't trust her anymore. And then came the worst part, the part that made my heart drop into my stomach. She admitted almost casually, "I was just confused. I didn't know if I was ready to marry you yet. He was a distraction, a way to figure out what I really wanted." A distraction. That's how she saw me. I was just a backup plan, a safe choice, while she figured out what her feelings for this guy were. I wanted to scream, to throw everything in her face, but instead, I just sat there, stunned. This wasn't just a betrayal of trust. It was a betrayal of everything I had ever believed about our relationship. For years together, and now I was nothing more than an option? A backup? I stood up, my mind spinning, heart racing. I don't know how you thought you could keep me around while you figured things out, but I can't do this anymore. You don't get to treat me like this.
She started to cry.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to
Hurt you.
I didn't know what I wanted, but now I do. I'm ready, I swear. But it was too late. The damage was done. To be continued. I needed air. I needed space. My chest felt tight, suffocating, as if I was trapped in a room too small for the weight of what had just happened. Liz's words rang in my head, her apology echoing, but it meant nothing. She could beg and plead, she could cry all she wanted, but I knew I couldn't stay in this relationship any longer. I grabbed my keys and left. I needed to clear my mind, and the last place I wanted to be was sitting there with her, pretending like everything could just go back to normal. How could I look at her the same way after all of this? How could I ever trust her again when she had kept me as a backup? The drive was long, but every minute of it felt like a release. I was alone with my thoughts, and every doubt, every frustration, every ounce of betrayal was crashing over me in waves. Liz wasn't just uncertain about us. She had been planning to keep her options open, testing the waters with this guy from work, all while I thought we were working toward a future together. When I finally made it back home, I was exhausted, not physically, but emotionally. I had been running on fumes, trying to hold everything together for so long, and now it felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff. Liz was waiting for me when I walked through the door. Her face was pale, red from crying, and her eyes were swollen. She'd clearly been a mess since I left, but I wasn't sure if I could feel sympathy for her anymore. She didn't deserve my empathy, not after what she'd done. I messed up, she said as soon as she saw me. I know I did. And I'm so sorry. I want to make things right. She started to ramble on about how she had been confused, how she didn't realize what she had until she almost lost it, how she was ready now, really ready. She promised to cut all contact with the guy from work, to focus on us, to prove that she was committed. But her words felt hollow to me. How was I supposed to trust her now? How could I believe that this time she wasn't just saying whatever she thought I wanted to hear? I didn't say anything at first. I just stood there, staring at her. The silence stretched out between us, thick and heavy. I could see the desperation in her eyes, and maybe part of me still wanted to believe her. But the other part of me, the part that had been betrayed, knew I couldn't go back to this. I wasn't her second choice, her fallback plan, and I wasn't going to sit around waiting for her to figure out if she wanted me or not. I can't just forget what you've done, I finally said, my voice low, but steady. You've already shown me where I stand in your life, and I'm not going to keep giving you chances to hurt me again. Liz's face fell. Please don't say that. I know I messed up, but I love you. I want to be with you. I just needed time to figure things out. I'm not some project you get to work on until you decide you're ready for me. I snapped, the anger bubbling up from somewhere. Deep inside. I've been ready for us for years. But you were the one who needed time. And while you were busy figuring things out, you strung me along. I saw her wince at my words, but it didn't matter. She had pushed me to this point. She had pushed me away, and now there was no going back. I can't do this anymore, I said, my voice cold. I don't know if I can ever trust you again. And I don't want to spend the rest of my life wondering if I'm just someone you settle for when it's convenient. She started to cry harder, begging me not to leave. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please don't walk away from us. But I was done. I couldn't look at her without seeing the lies. Every time I thought about the future, all I saw now was uncertainty. There was no room for that in my life anymore. I'm not going to stay and pretend that things can go back to normal, I said. You need to leave. Pack your stuff and go. Her face twisted in shock, and for a moment, she didn't say anything. I could see the pain on her face, but I didn't care anymore. She had made her choice, and I was finally making mine. I'm sorry, she whispered, almost in disbelief. But I didn't flinch. I wasn't going to be guilted into staying. She started packing slowly, like she couldn't believe this was really happening. I felt a strange sense of relief wash over me as I watched her gather her things. For the first time in days, I wasn't filled with uncertainty. I had made a decision, and it felt like I was taking control back. When her friend arrived to pick her up, I didn't look at Liz. I didn't say goodbye. I just watched as she left, carrying nothing but the baggage of a failed relationship. I felt a mixture of anger, sadness, and, strangely, freedom. The door closed behind her with a finality that hit me harder than I expected. For years of memories, of dreams about a future that would never come to be, were gone in an instant. But I wasn't going to mourn the loss of someone who had never truly valued me. I blocked her number and deleted all the pictures we'd taken together. It hurt, but it was necessary. There was no going back from this, and I knew I had to start fresh. The next few days were a blur. I didn't know how to process what had happened. Some moments I felt angry at Liz, others I was mad at myself for not seeing the signs sooner. But no matter how I felt, one thing was clear. I was done. She had made her choice. And now, so had I. To be continued. The first few days after Liz left felt surreal, like I was living in someone else's life. I had gone from being in a committed relationship, planning a future, to suddenly being alone, surrounded by nothing but empty space and unanswered questions. The apartment, once filled with her presence, now felt hollow. It was like a weight had been lifted, but at the same time, I was left with this unsettling feeling that I couldn't shake. I spent a lot of time replaying the last few weeks in my mind. Was there anything I missed? Any clues that would have prepared me for the heartbreak? It was hard to say. Liz had been so good at hiding things, so good at pretending everything was fine when I now knew it wasn't. I thought I knew her, but she had kept me in the dark. She had kept her options open while I had put my heart on the line, believing we were building something real. As much as I wanted to focus on moving forward, the past kept creeping up on me. I would be walking through the store and see something we had picked out together, or hear a song we used to love, and for a moment, I'd feel this strange pang of nostalgia. But I wasn't stupid. The truth was clear now. I had spent 4 years with someone who wasn't sure about me, someone who was willing to keep me around as a backup plan while she explored other options. That was not the kind of relationship I wanted. I had to remind myself of that every time the doubt started to creep in. But then, there was this strange satisfaction in knowing that I had made the right choice. Liz had made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I had given her enough chances. I had been understanding, patient, hopeful. But in the end, she showed me who she truly was. A few days after Liz left, I started hearing things through mutual friends. It wasn't anything I had sought out, but the updates kept coming. Apparently, Liz had gone to stay with a friend who had picked her up, but that didn't last long. From what I heard, her friend had gotten fed up with the drama and kicked her out. Liz had nowhere else to go, so she ended up at her parents' house. But from what I gathered, that wasn't much better. Her parents, who had always liked me, were disappointed in her. They didn't understand why she had thrown away something good, especially after they had grown so fond of me. They had believed in us, and now they were seeing how badly Liz had messed things up. According to one of our mutual friends, her parents had told her to get her act together, but Liz wasn't showing any signs of growth. She kept making the same mistakes, and her parents, after a while, had told her to leave. It was a bitter pill to swallow, but I couldn't help but feel a sense of justice. Liz had burned every bridge she had, and now she was paying the price. The guy she had been talking to at work, he was long gone. Apparently, he had moved on quickly, and Liz was left with nothing but the consequences of her choices. I heard through the grapevine that Liz had started bouncing from one temporary place to another. She was basically living out of a suitcase, with no stability, no sense of direction. The irony wasn't lost on me. She had always taken me for granted, but now, she was the one without a home, without any real plans. At some point, I started feeling like she had gotten what she deserved. It wasn't that I was happy about her misery. It was more about the fact that it was clear she had never valued what we had. I had been the one who always gave her my best, but she had been too busy testing the waters elsewhere. And now, she was left picking up the pieces of her own mess. Still, there was a part of me that felt sorry for her, but only for a moment. I couldn't afford to be soft on her anymore. I had to remind myself that I wasn't the one who had messed up, and I wasn't going to keep feeling bad for someone who had treated me like an option. One evening, about 2 weeks after Liz left, I got a call from her. It was late, and I wasn't expecting it, but when I saw her name pop up on my phone, my heart skipped a beat. I didn't answer right away. I let it ring a few times before picking up. "Hey," she said, her voice shaky. I know you're probably angry at me, but I need to talk. I really messed up."
I didn't know what to say.
Part of me wanted to yell at her, to ask her how she could have done this to me, but I stayed calm. "What do you want, Liz?" She took a deep breath, and I could hear the tears in her voice. "I'm sorry for everything. I should have never let things get this far. I messed things up with you, and I know I can't take it back. But I want to start over. I want to try again. I want you to propose to me again, but this time, with my full commitment." There was a long pause as her words sank in. I couldn't believe it. She was asking me to trust her again, to give her another shot, to propose to her again, like nothing had happened. It felt like a slap in the face. She had been the one who wanted time to figure things out, and now she wanted me to just forget everything. As if proposing again would somehow erase the months of uncertainty, the lies, the betrayal. "Liz," I said, my voice steady but final. "You made your choice. You chose him. And now, when he lets you down, you come back to me like I'm some sort of safety net? I'm not going to be your backup plan. I'm not some consolation prize you come crawling back to when things don't go your way." There was a brief silence before she started crying again. "Please, I know I messed up.
I'm sorry.
Please, give me another chance." I felt nothing. It wasn't anger anymore, it was just numbness. This wasn't about her anymore.
It was about me.
I had learned what I needed to know, and there was nothing she could say to make it right. "I'm done, Liz," I said, my voice firm. "You don't get to do this to me. You made your choice, and now I'm making mine. It's over." She tried to beg some more, but I didn't listen. I ended the call and sat there for a long time afterward, staring at the screen. Liz was gone, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I could breathe again. To be continued. It's funny how quickly things can change. One moment, I'm reeling from the heartbreak, questioning my worth, wondering if I was the one who messed up. The next, I'm standing in the wreckage of a relationship that should have been everything, and I finally understand. It took me too long to get here, but now that I was out, I wasn't going back. Liz's final attempt to salvage things only solidified the one thing I needed to realize. She never really valued me. If she had, she wouldn't have played me like a safety net. But it wasn't just her mistakes that had led us here, it was mine too. I had stayed when I should have walked away. I had hoped when there was no reason left to believe. I let myself be strung along by false promises and fleeting affection. I thought love was enough, but love isn't just about words. It's about actions. And Liz's actions showed me exactly how little I meant. I didn't look back after hanging up the phone that night. I spent the next few days in a haze of exhaustion, trying to process everything that had happened. The days felt long, but each one brought me closer to understanding that this was the end of that chapter. The relief was immediate, but it wasn't without pain. There were moments when I missed her, the person I thought she was, and wondered if I was making a mistake. But then I reminded myself of the truth. She had made her choices, and now I was making mine. I didn't hear from her again after that call, which didn't surprise me. I knew she would never truly admit what she had done, and that was something I could no longer accept. She had made it clear through her actions that she wasn't capable of giving me the honesty or commitment I deserved. Weeks passed, and slowly, I started rebuilding my life. I went back to the things I had put on hold, the hobbies and passions I had abandoned in favor of being her guy. I took long walks by myself, spent more time with friends, and focused on the things that had once brought me joy before I got lost in the idea of a future with someone who wasn't even sure about me. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Every step forward felt like a victory. But then I got a message. It wasn't from Liz, though. It was from a mutual friend, someone who had been keeping tabs on Liz's downward spiral. The message was short, but it told me everything I needed to know. Liz tried reaching out to a few other people. Most of them are done with her. She's been bouncing between random places trying to find somewhere to crash. Karma's really coming for her, man. I read the message over and over. Part of me felt vindicated. The girl who had played with my heart was now facing the consequences of her actions. Her parents were done with her. The guy she had flirted with?
Gone.
Even her friends were starting to distance themselves. The chaos she had created in my life was now hers to deal with, and I wasn't a part of it anymore. But there was no joy in knowing that. Not anymore. Liz had made her choices, and now she had to face the consequences. I wasn't going to be there to fix her mistakes, not when she hadn't even tried to fix her own. It wasn't that I hated her, it was just that I couldn't allow myself to be part of her drama anymore. The pain of what she had done wasn't something I could just forget. But at the same time, I wasn't going to keep carrying it. I had learned my lesson, and it wasn't one I intended to repeat. Then one afternoon, about a month after everything ended, I got a knock on my door. I didn't know who it was at first, but when I opened it, there she was.
Liz.
Standing there, looking like she hadn't slept in days, her eyes red from crying. I couldn't believe she was standing there in front of me again. She wasn't here to apologize. No, this time, she wanted something else. I'm sorry. I know I messed up, she said, voice shaking. But I was hoping that maybe we could try again. I want you to give me another chance. I've learned my lesson. I know what I want now. I stared at her for a long moment. The urge to yell at her, to tell her how much she had hurt me, was strong. But I kept it inside. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of seeing me lose control. You had your chance, I said finally, and you made your choice. You wanted him, and when he let you down, you came back to me like I was your backup plan. But I'm not that person. I won't be your second choice. Her face fell, and I saw the desperation in her eyes, but it wasn't enough. She had betrayed my trust, and no apology was going to fix that. She could cry all she wanted, but I wasn't going to let her back into my life. I can't go back, I told her. I've moved on. I've learned that I deserve more than someone who isn't sure about me. I'm done. She stood there, speechless, for a moment, and I could see her trying to process what I had just said. Then, without another word, she turned and walked away. And that was it. That was the final moment I needed. After everything, it ended just like that. There was no dramatic closure, no big fight. Liz had made her choices, and I had made mine. It was over, and I was free. The days that followed were filled with a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. It wasn't a loud, celebratory freedom. It was quiet, like the calm after a storm, but it was mine. I was no longer tied to someone who didn't know what she wanted. I was free to rebuild my life, to find happiness on my own terms. As for Liz, well, I'd heard through mutual friends that things hadn't gotten better for her. She was still struggling, still lost in a cycle of regret and broken relationships. Karma, as they say, had a way of working its magic. I knew that I had made the right choice. Sometimes, the hardest part of moving on isn't leaving the person behind, it's letting go of the version of them you thought you knew. But in the end, it was worth it. I deserved someone who would choose me, someone who would see me as their first choice. And that's what I'm holding out for. This story is a powerful reminder that we can't force someone to love us or commit when they're not ready. Trust is earned, and once it's broken, it's incredibly hard to rebuild. The biggest lesson here is that you should never settle for someone who isn't sure about you. We all deserve love, respect, and a partner who sees us as more than a backup plan. Don't be afraid to walk away from relationships that don't serve you. The right person will come along when you stop settling for less than you deserve. What do you think of this story? Have you ever been in a situation where you had to walk away from someone who didn't appreciate you? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.